William Kerwin is with us, equity analyst at Morningstar, and Andrew Graham, CEO at Jackson Square Capital. William, I'll start with you. There's been somewhat of a pause on the 16 for the intelligence part. I think people thought maybe if they bought it, they would have Apple Intelligence on day one. But there are high hopes for a smarter Siri coming. Tell me a little bit more about this.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. So it's important to know that the iPhone is really Apple's largest driver. It's over half of their total revenues. And so as the iPhone goes, Apple's results will go, and we think Apple's stock will go. Now, what we've seen is that this delay of Apple Intelligence, which really is just for about a month, it's set to release sometime in October, has delayed some demand for the new iPhone 16, but we continue to expect that the unlocking of these new software features with AI and all the tools that come with it will drive a stronger growth cycle for the iPhone this year and continuing into next year, especially with that delay. So maybe a bit of a slower start, but our other expectations for a strong cycle here remain consistent.
Is it good enough? Is it okay that we have to wait for that, William? I mean, is it enough?
Well, we think it is. And, the upside, or maybe the optimistic take to this, is that we're getting a lot of iPhone 16s in the hands of consumers even before this software rolls out. So you have more people when it officially does roll out that can use it on day one there. So it may have slowed the amount of people that wanted to get the 16 right when it released, but we'll see a large user base, and Apple always relies on that word of mouth to drive more demand for those units going forward.
All right, so it's enough, but just to be clear, I mean, you have 2 stars and a price target which is much lower than where it's currently trading. Is that right, William?
It is, and it really just comes down to valuation. We think Apple is a fundamentally extremely strong company. We have a wide economic moat rating on it, and we expect strong growth for the iPhone over the next 2 years, as I was just talking about. But we think the multiple being placed on it in the market right now is just too high.
All right, Andrew Graham, what do you think? I mean, when you talk about shorter lead times for some of these iPhones, is Apple in a great position for the holidays? It's at $232 today. What say you?
Well, so the stock's having a good hair day because of the setup. The shorter lead times that we saw in iPhone 16 versus the 15 launch last year was probably due to the delay in the launch of Apple Intelligence. But today we have week 3 data. Actually, yesterday we have that, and it shows lead time steady for the Pro and Pro Max in week 3 versus moderation of 7 and 9 days in week 3 for the 2015 launch. So things seem to be picking up a little bit. I think that was a little bit, something to do with the fact that you're going to get an October software update that's going to include Apple Intelligence. Right. Let's hope. One quote though here, or statement, is that lead times are just sort of an incomplete picture of demand trends because we don't have channel inventory numbers. But generally, it's a good indication, and it seems like things are picking up. Yeah.
You seem to like some of the AI benefits, Andrew. You have a few listed here. Would you buy the stock today?
So we don't buy anything that's technically overbought. I mean, that's the weird thing about being a generalist PM and being an analyst, and at the same time being a CFA, you'd have to kind of mix some of the technical stuff with the fundamentals, and it's just overbought. So once it gets to oversold, we'll definitely add exposure. Right now, we probably have an equal weight with the S&P, and that's the game that most PMs play, is whether we're going to equal or overweight Apple. This is eventually going to be an overweight for us because we've got a multi-year upgrade cycle, and that's going to add significantly to Apple's earnings power. So yes, love it at the right price. So soon.
Yeah. All right. So you're both in agreement that the stock is pretty hefty in its valuations. It did hit its all-time highs in July, 237. As far as some of the particulars of the AI capabilities, what's going to be the clincher, William? What's going to make people say, I want to upgrade my iPhone? I mean, there's a slew of things that we see with the newest iPhone, but what do you think is really going to grab them? A regular person that really wants to do what?
We think it'll be the emphasis on this personal nature of AI. And that's why they're calling it Apple Intelligence, personal intelligence, you name it. Each feature in isolation, whether it's helping write an email or editing some photos, might seem minor, but the ability of Apple to really deeply integrate these in things that people use every day is the secret sauce there. And it comes back to Apple's strategy across the portfolio, which is this tight integration, software, hardware, semiconductors, and tech that just works. And we think that'll continue with the AI. We think, this delayed rollout isn't ideal for the company, but it shows that they want to release a pretty much perfect product rather than get something that's 90% of the way there in hand sooner.
Yeah, and are you worried either, Andrew, about the regulatory environment or the competition abroad?
Yeah, so the EU Digital Markets Act, which has deemed Apple a gatekeeper based on their control of iOS and of the App Store and of Safari, could, potentially, if they didn't comply, could lead to a fine of 10% of global revenues, which is significant. But Apple, of course, said it's going to be challenging to find a solution that's agreeable to EU regulators that offers interoperability, which is what the regulators want, and is still protecting the privacy of consumer data. They have ample time is the issue. This whole thing is supposed to be, a stair-step approach over multi-years, over a 2-year period. They have all of fiscal of full year 25, calendar year 25 to figure it out. So they're going to find something that gives them the same product, meets the EU regulators' demands and so forth. But it's going to happen, and the rollout wasn't really supposed to happen until 26 anyway. So.
Right. All right. Thank you both. So looking like it's a little overvalued. We'll see if people jump in there. William Kerwin and Andrew Graham, thank you both for being with us here on Trading 360.